This is Moving Soulward, the podcast about growing a business at the intersection of strategy, spirituality, and self-care. We're your hosts, Katie Maclachlan, your Be Good guide, and
Maria Spiralis, the lunar lawyer. We love a good inspirational story, but we're not interested in just profits or bottom lines. Though don't get us wrong, those things are important.
in Moving Soulward, expect to hear conversations with entrepreneurs who are at all different stages of building a business, with two important things in common. Success means something different to each of them, and you don't have to sell your soul to get what you want.
Prioritizing stillness, systems, energies, and service are all valuable and necessary parts of mindful entrepreneurship. Now grab your favorite card deck, a warm mug, spark up a candle, and listen in. Welcome back to Moving Soulward. In this special episode, I am interviewing Katie Maclachlan. And Katie, as you know, is an intuitive astrological counselor and practical career coach who bridges cosmic insights with grounded strategy. Her background is in launching global platforms. She's owned a bar. She's amazing. But Katie brings a wealth of experience to her work, from managing international teams to running her own businesses. Now, as the founder of Be Good Guide, Katie helps solopreneurs align their passions with success, offering a unique blend of intuition and expertise to guide them on their journey. I know you're going to love this conversation with Katie. Here we go.
Hi. We're in that Palo Santo.
For the vibes.
I just did Sage.
Wonderful. We covered all the bases.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm excited for this conversation because I'm going to use it as a way to just learn even more of your genius. But I would love for you to give us a brief description of all of the things that you do for the audience.
Yeah. So 2 years ago, I started my company, Be Good Guide. And my goal with it is to do all things that blend business strategy and traditional sort of like corporate America things that I've learned throughout my career, human-centered design and all these different things with more intuitive practices. So astrology, human design, tarot. And my mission is to help support soulpreneurs. So that could look like someone who is just like really emotionally dying in a cubicle, unfulfilled, and is not in flow, is not like living their purpose and their magic, and helping them move towards their purpose. And that could look like creating a new company. That could look like finding a new career path. I really love working with people in that transition, or someone who has chosen to create a business based on their purpose and their magic and their dharma, but is maybe stuck in the one-on-one services. Like they've reached that sort of growth edge of, okay, I'm doing the thing that I love to do, but I also don't necessarily know what my next step is, or how to grow this, or how to make this a scalable business. That can look like someone who is doing maybe one-on-one sessions, like a sound healer doing one-on-one sessions, or someone who's doing like basically a side hustle. They could still be in their 9 to 5 job and they want to make that a full business, or someone who has a small business that wants to take it to the next level.
Yeah. I love that you talk in the context of purpose, because that's not really something, it's not like really a word that would have come to me naturally before we started working together. And I'm sure there's a whole process that you go through with your clients, but I'm curious if there's a way you can maybe even summarize for us or give us a glimpse of how do you start that process of even uncovering what your purpose is?
Yeah, I mean, this is like really the thing that when I was deconditioning from corporate America, when I made the leap, this was like my whole focus for myself. So this really lights me. This is the part of the process that really lights me up when I'm working with clients. I call this the self-discovery phase. Purpose is not something that is like a destination that you find. It's really like an avenue, and the goal is fulfillment, right? Like purpose creates fulfillment. So when you feel like you're living a purposeful life, I've listened to a lot of happiness podcasts, like the science of happiness and all of that. And there's an equation that specifically goes through how do you become happy? Like, how do you create happiness in your life? And purpose is one of those pillars. If you don't feel like you're here for a reason or that you're doing something for something greater than yourself, that's where you start to feel, okay, well, what is this all for? What am I even doing with my life? That's where those thoughts start to creep in. So that's sort of the impetus. But purpose is not, like I said, it's not something you find. It's not, oh, it's somewhere in this house. Like I need to find it. It really comes to you. It's built in. Like there are tons of ways that you can activate that purpose in your life, and it's all through self-discovery. So I guide clients through a series of exercises that help them recreate or reignite that connection with themselves. So I don't have the answers. You do. I mean, I've got a cheat sheet because I look at your birth chart and I get like a little cheat code bonus level up, like being able to look at a chart of a client and say, I can see, here are different areas that could light someone up where they would feel emotionally fulfilled, where they would feel like they're connected. Like that's all in a birth chart. And I can also look at a human design chart and look at the cross and what their life theme is, and there's indicators, right? So those are all tools that are very helpful in uncovering within someone what drives them, what gives them that feeling of fulfillment. But ultimately it's about creating the strength and confidence in that conversation with yourself. So a lot of clients, in the questions that I ask, what are your core values? What is your core skill set? What are your talents? What motivates you? These are not questions that you're asked every day. So a lot of times it's like the deer in the headlights. I've never had to articulate that before.
Start to think about that.
I have not thought about that. And so I have a series of exercises that I like lead clients through. And it's to create clarity on that, right? And build that trust muscle.
Really quickly, I wanted to hop in here and tell you something that you probably already know if you're listening to this podcast. But just in case you don't, Katie and I are hosting the first annual Soulward Summit conference. This is a business conference for mindful leaders, for mindful achievers, for business owners who know that they should listen to their intuition, who know they shouldn't get stuck in hustle culture mode, but sometimes they do. And you want to really incorporate your intrinsic gifts, your own authenticity into your business and your brand and take it to the next iteration of your dream. And so if you're interested, head to soulwordsummit.com and you'll get all of the details there on tickets and ticket options. We hope to see you there.
Once you start having those conversations with yourself, those conversations come easier. So in the beginning, I was the same. I was like, I don't know what my purpose is. I know that this direction is interesting. I'm interested in astrology. I love creating new business ideas. But it didn't, none of those dots connected for me until I was able to create that strength and that confidence in the conversation with myself, of that deep knowing of this is who I am. This is what lights me up. This is what feels fulfilling to me. And so, yeah, there's like the starting point of starting that conversation. Then there's also things that you can do to build that trust muscle over time to make that conversation your most prominent conversation. So I like to think of it as, if all of your inputs of what you're doing is external, what you should be doing on social media, what you thought you should be doing in your life, or what your parents think you should be doing. That's all external feedback. And so the idea is to make that internal feedback loop the strongest source of what you're doing and where you're going and what fulfills you. Because no one else can really articulate that. Like I said, I can look at a chart and get some indications and sort of be like, have you thought about this? But I can't, it's like a matchmaker who can set up two people on a date and they're like, this is compatible. I could see that this could work, but they can't tell you whether there's going to be chemistry or not. I can't tell you what the exact thing is that's going to give you fulfillment, but I can give you the parameters or like guidance on where you can look to try out and what you can experiment with.
Yeah, that's so good. So, when are you your happiest? What was your favorite project that you worked on? Like little things like that to get
Mhm,
to, and I'm sure lots of input from charts and from their charts, but rather than just what is your purpose, of course.
mhm.
Oh, I haven't ever thought about that. I'm sure you get that a lot.
Yeah. And there's really some nuanced questions or like those activities that we go through that that become aha moments. Like generally people can talk about are more comfortable talking about their skill set or their talents because that is something that has been attached to a resume before, right? But when it comes to core values and motivator, like if you're motivated by like recognition, like I get the award, get the be in the press. If you're motivated by that and you're working in a company where your boss is always giving you all this stuff to do and never says great job, you are working in an environment that is violating your core values. And so that's where things start to get really interesting and you get these aha moments around, oh, well, duh, no wonder if I'm not in an environment that's, like, motivating me by the one thing that I'm motivated by, of course it doesn't feel good. So
Oh
that's
my
where, like, I
gosh.
love those magic aha moments and seeing it's more of, like validation, right? I say the same about looking at human design charts and astrology charts. It's not you're not going to learn anything you don't already know, but the connecting the dots in a different way gives those aha moments. So it's like, "Oh, duh. And then usually people are like, well, why why there's usually a little bit of beating themselves up like, why didn't I figure this out before? I do this all the time too. I'm like, of course this makes sense. Like, why didn't I know this before? But I really feel like it's, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. So I always say you can't be mad at yourself for what didn't connect before. This is all part of the journey.
Yes. And I feel like a lot of that stuff is like, here's your permission slip to
Mhm.
be how you are, to have your preferences, like especially some of the human design stuff. It's like permission slip. This is how you are.
Yeah.
Permission granted. Go and be.
Yeah, it's not a choice. So like for me, there was a lot. I mean, I'm a 5/1 manifester, so corporate America and like that grind and everything is really against like my whole design because I'm meant to work in creative urges and then rest, creative urges and then rest. I'm meant to have agency. I'm meant to have authority. I'm meant to initiate. I'm not meant to be laddering up to other people. I'm just like, it's all in my charts, in my birth charts, in my human design chart, everything. And so really embracing that and being like, this is a fact about myself, not a choice. I think there's a lot of, oh, well, if I just like work like that other person's working, that'll like great. That's what I was doing for a long time, but it wasn't authentic to myself. It wasn't my specific way of working. So now those things become so ingrained that it's like the same as like the color of my hair, which, I can change obviously, but like the color of my eyes, like I think of it as no, this is stuff that like could go on my license in the future when we start putting like, oh, my name is Katie Maclachlan. This is my address. My eyes are brown and I'm a 5/1 manifester and I have an Aries sun, Scorpio moon, Cancer rising, like, this is how I operate. These are all become like facts about who you are. So they're a lot easier to trust than oh, well, maybe I should try doing this instead. It feels more like a part of you.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm curious, so we heard a little bit about your corporate America to your business journey, but in terms of finding astrology before that, or when
Mhm.
you found astrology and tarot, tell me a little bit about that because I don't think that's something that we've talked about before, and I'm curious what that looks like when you found it and how it's evolved.
Yeah, I mean, tarot was first back
Interesting.
in college, right? Back in college, my friend who I met freshman year of college, she introduced me to tarot, which I believe her mom taught her. Her mom I love. She's like my spirit animal, fellow Aries. And so she would do readings for me, traditional tarot deck. We'd get together, be like, what is my love life gonna look like? And it was fun. It was a fun way of connecting. And I looking back, like that was a more in-depth connection that I was having with a friend, or like an in-depth conversation that I was having with a friend that I wasn't really having in other scenarios. I am definitely someone who took a longer time to get connected to my own emotions. I've worked a lot on vulnerability. So the me now didn't have those tools then to be like even going to friends being like, this is what's going on in my life. So tarot was a way to have those conversations. And it started out, I mean, I think probably for years, it was just her, like, doing readings for me. It was something fun to do, and then I got my first tarot deck. I was like, "Oh, I should figure this out," and I like playing with it. And I started using it as a way of self-reflection. So again, as I was, like, going deeper into this self-discovery of who am I? And not at this point, it was not intentional. I was just like, oh, this is fun. I wasn't journaling. So it was like these were good ways to journal prompt. And then right around my Saturn return, so 7 years ago, was when it felt like this big wave of like, what am I doing? Who am I? What do I care about? It felt like I was just sort of like moving through life on autopilot and I wasn't like actually making intentional decisions to get like to where I wanted to go. Like from the outside looking in, my life was great, like on paper, amazing, but I there was something internal that shifted in that Saturn return. And I started listening to I remember listening to the Mark Groves podcast, and he had a bunch of different leaders, practitioners on there talking about all sorts of different things, ways of living, and then that spider webbed into all sorts of other things. And at the same time, I'd always been interested in pop astrology. So whenever like CoStar came out, I downloaded that. When Channy came out, I downloaded that. It was like dabbling, but really post Saturn return, I was like, this is something that I'm intrigued by. I love systems. So tarot is a system. Each suit tells a hero's journey. Like there's systems to these things. And so when I realized that and I went deeper than just the fun, oh, this is what's going on today, or this is the energy of the day, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so powerful." And I remember my first sort of like, I've got a rabbit hole on this was when I learned about the houses in astrology and that layer and how things connect. And I was like, "Oh my god, like this is amazing." And then still for years, this was something I did personally. If friends came over, I'd read their tarot cards. I'd collect people's birth information in my time passages and give them little mini readings or be like, oh, this is what it means. And so I had not at the time, up until a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, been like, this is something that could be a career or something that I was even interested in career wise. And then the last thing I'll say about all this is even when I was like, I do want to make a career that involves this, I knew immediately, because I had done that self-discovery work, that, like, the things that I care about are scale, systems, tools. I knew that even though I enjoy doing one-on-one work in this way, like a one-on-one reading, it's not something that I wanna make a business out of. I wanna keep that very much a, like, personal connection thing. So, I'll do it occasionally, but that I knew that that was not gonna be, like, the end goal bulk of my business, which ultimately meant that there was not a roadmap for what I was trying to do because every astrologer out there that I was seeing was doing horoscopes, predictions, and one-on-one readings. Um, so yeah, tarot first, then astrology. I did a 24-hour deep dive on Gene Keys a couple months ago. I'm level 1 sound healer certified. I'm Reiki trained. I just started dabbling in all the things. And human design has been more of a slower burn too, where I'll like rabbit hole on it for a couple of days, integrate that with what I know about astrology, and then come back to it. And so there's just like this ever evolving thirst for knowledge in these tools for self discovery, which is what I categorize all of them as, not a belief system.
No, this reminds me of a book, and it's either you are a badass or you are a badass at making money, both of which are
Hmm.
great. But the author tells a story about her friend who was just the best MC at events and even like a party. He would MC people as they would walk in and describe their outfits, and he was just so good at it. And meanwhile, was in this kind of crushing, soul sucking job, and I don't know if it was that someone pointed out to him or showed him, like, how good he was at this thing, and he's like, "How could I even charge for this? Like, I loved it. This is just something that
Yeah.
I love doing, and that is such a part of my life that I can't imagine, like, building a career on this." But then he did, and of course, he was great at it. So that's what your story kind of reminded me of astrology and tarot, and this is fun. Oh, I can build a career from this? I guess so.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's such a I mean, it's like an infectious energetic exchange in this type of work that, like, I mean, it lights me the fuck up. And don't I don't chase happiness in this lifetime. I make a lot of decisions based on happiness, but I'm not chasing like happiness 24/7, but I chase flow and I chase like magic moments. Like I want the more magic moments that I can have in this lifetime, like the better. And so I would start to feel like even and this is when my claircognizance started coming in is I would be doing a tarot reading for a friend and I would be saying something that was channeled. I didn't realize that that's what it was at the time, but I'd be saying something and I'd get like full body chills. I'd feel it. They would light up. They'd be like, that is so real, like that. And I could see the like value in real time that the other person is getting. And that's ultimately what fulfills me. Astrology, tarot, business strategy, all of this stuff, all these tools are the like the vehicle, but what fulfills me is like helping people move into their purpose and their power and their magic and away from things that like don't light them up. There's nothing that like frustrates me more than someone being just miserable in the same cycle and being stuck and like complaining about it over and over and over again. I'm like, well, you need to change it. You need to be in your magic. Like, you're not in your magic. Like,
Yes.
because everyone
You
has
don't
access
have
to
to
this.
be.
Like
Yeah.
everyone has access to their own whatever their own version of fulfillment is. This is not like just meant for the chosen few. This is literally everyone. So I'm like, you could be in Lucky Girl Energy too. You could do it.
Yeah. You don't have to. Well, but I have, bills and I have this and I have that. So I kind of have to stay in this job. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, you don't have to.
There are
And
reasons why, but
there's always ways to navigate that. I mean, with clients who are looking to leave their job, I have 2 clients who I'm working on like a beta of a group program and they both left their corporate jobs like mid that group program. And we start to talk about, okay, well, if you're building a new business, that takes time, but what are the bridge jobs? What are the ways that you can move towards what your purpose is and away from these things that violate your core values. And that could mean another corporate job. That could mean doing some gig culture for a while, like having a few different jobs, but it's more about like how can I start to steer the Titanic away from the iceberg, right? Like how can I if I'm choosing to stay in this environment that is violating my core values, it's very difficult to come up for air and make any choice to go a different direction, right? You're fatigued, you're in burnout, you're literally in that nervous system overload like cycle. And so it's very hard when you're in that to be like, let me dream up this like whole new business. You need to do something to relieve that pressure to give yourself the space to then make the pivot. And if that's okay, I'm interested in a more creative direction and I'm working at a healthcare company. Okay, well, maybe leave the healthcare company and work somewhere that is more creative and has a more creative environment or is a more creative product or is a more just creative field. You can make these sort of stepping stone shifts. It doesn't have to be like so extreme, right? Live in misery or live my best life. There's a sliding scale to get there.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And why do you think it is that those two people left their corporate job in the middle of the group program? At what point did they get to? Was it that they started doing the self discovery work and they started doing the core values and they realized, like, oh, I'm done with this? I'm curious if you saw if there were any threads that were common between those two folks that left.
I think one thing is there was a level with both of them before I even started working with them of this isn't working. So they already had the this ain't it moment. They were already like this ain't it. I like cannot sustain this. This is really hurting my mental health. This is not lighting me up. This is not they already had that moment, and a lot of people get stuck in that moment because then they have the "Well, I don't know what to do next. Where do I how do I make a change? What do I even want to do?" That becomes paralyzing, right? The analysis paralysis. So many options. You can do anything. And then some people will make another step, but they'll be like, okay, well, I'll just give myself a year to figure this out. And they wait till they're like ready, right? And I think with both of these clients, it was about you don't have to be ready to make a change because you don't have to figure out a whole new like life and career and business right now, but you can make a shift of what do I want to stop doing? What do I want to keep doing? And what do I want to start doing? And then you can make decisions just based on that. And obviously with that, you look at, well, what do I need to like financially survive? And then what can I do? That becomes a much smaller, easier problem though to solve if you're just looking at the immediate step and not trying to figure out the, 2-year outcome. And so I think that was the missing piece for both of them was like, I know that I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know what I want to do next. For one of them, like, who's also a manifester, which can be this is a manifestor and manifesting generator, challenge for these specific clients. It's like, well, I can do all these there's so many things I can do. I wanna do this and this and this and this and this and this and this. So for manifestors and manifesting generators, we really focus on, again, like narrowing that down of what is the next step. That doesn't mean you can't do all the things you wanna do, but what is just the next step? And let's ideate, we do brainstorming activities, and we look at phases, and we, like, really narrow it down into, "Okay, this is the next thing, and it's aligned with my values, it's aligned with my skill set, it's aligned with what I need financially, and this is the next step," and then we can figure out the next step, and the next step, and the next step. But having just high confidence in that single next step gives you the room to then relieve that burnout and deprogram stuff that you need to deprogram, and that gives you that space. And then as you move forward on those steps, the idea is to give yourself even more room and more space to figure out what you want, do less of the things that don't light you up, do more of the things that you do. And in looking at those future phases, they become more speculative. Well, maybe in 3 years I'll wanna be doing this, this, and this. You're dreaming. So there's a contraction that we do. There's like a it's very Saturn. Let's put in some rules and some structures and some guidelines on the next step. And then there's very Jupiter energy of I walk clients through a, like, highest and best self best day in work 3 years from now visualization. And then that's the really like Jupiter expansive. What are the possibilities if I am living in this like authentic self embodiment, purpose, fulfillment? Like, what does that even look like? And that helps ground those like future, let me get the wheels turning about what I want my future to look like. It helps ground that in some examples, but it's not set in stone. Nothing in those future states is ever set in stone because it's focusing at the end of the day, I want clients to focus on their current step and their next step, where they're at now, and then let their own internal feedback loop guide them and towards the future, like what their next thing is.
I think that's a brilliant structure because for those of us who are achievers, all of us here in this space, From an achievement standpoint, it's like, okay, I need to know what the next step is. And yay, I got to this next step and here's the next step. But also grounding those steps, it's like Notion,
Yep.
right? It's and grounding those steps in like the overarching, here's where we're working towards
Mhm.
as you achieve each of these milestones.
Yeah, and then all of that also syncs up with our own, like, internal cycles and seasons and everything. So if you think about, spring you're planting seeds, summer they're blooming, and then fall you're harvesting, and then winter you're resting. And so it breaking things down in very breaking very complex things down into very simple things is like one of my superpowers. And activities and strategies and ways to do that also lights me up. Like I love doing exercises like that. And so being able to help someone go from, well, I could do anything, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm stuck in this thing that I hate, to like, okay, I know the next place that I want to get to. And then as far as, let me not overcommit to like doing all the things all at once, which I'm so guilty of. I'm like constantly working on that. But being able to say, okay, what does this year look like? What does this season? What seeds am I planting now that I want to harvest in the fall? And another analogy I like to use is, if you've got a bunch of pots on the stove, what's at a simmer? What's at a boil? What do you want? You don't want everything boiling over all the time. So what are the things like that you want to experiment on? What are the things that you want to put into practice and do regularly? What are the things you're already doing that you just want to improve? There's lots of ways to look at how to go from A to B in a way that doesn't feel like overwhelming, scary, or hard. Because at the end of the day, especially people who choose to run their own business, entrepreneurs, like you have to be a master at your own nervous system, because when you're when you're operating a business, you are doing new things constantly, right? Doing new things constantly is what triggers that fear response. Is what triggers that lack mentality. Is what triggers that nervous system dysregulation, because your whole being, your whole body is, this is new. It's not what we've done before, so it's not safe.
Unknown.
It's unknown, so it's unsafe. And so, but again, that's just your internal protection. But unless you are literally going down a career that's going to put yourself in physical danger, I don't know, like trapping snakes or hunting bears or something, I don't know. Like you can sort of take that and be like, thank you for protecting me. This is where we've been. But you can if you dial up that confidence in what that next step is and how you can get there, it helps your nervous system be like, okay, at least, well, I trust myself that I can do this one next thing. And that is what sort of unlocks that like ability to take the leap and take the risk or move forward, and gets you out of that sort of stuckness that I see a lot.
Gosh, this is gonna be a hard job for me to pick a snippet from this episode to share on Instagram because you're just going, and there's
I'm
so much
feeling
good
very
from you
inflow
right
these
now.
days. So.
All right, I'm gonna turn the ship a little
Mhm,
bit, and you mentioned seasons and cycles, and we are entering traditional calendar wise, we are
mhm.
entering a new year soon and a new cycle. So I'm curious if there's one thing someone should look at in their natal chart as we approach this new season in 2025, as it relates to their business. Is there
Yeah.
one thing they should look at?
Okay, so one thing is gonna be so hard for me because you know that I am an over explainer, but I am working on a 2025, like a Thrive in 2025 business specific guide that I will probably be putting out before this episode, hopefully before this episode is live. So if that happens, then we'll link it. But the biggest thing to think about for 2025 is how the theme is reinvention. So there are outer planets that are all changing signs. I mean, the amount of things that are shifting is more than 2020, but the energy is very different. So the energy of 2020 was like breaking down systems and structures, and obviously like pandemic, like it was a lot of breaking down. 2025 is more about alignment and embracing change and moving towards. And so in the guide, I go through what to look at specifically where these things are lighting up. But I think that it's less about looking at your chart and more about looking at your where you're at on that scale of like self-abandoning, violating core values, not feeling fulfilled versus aligned in flow, like where are you at from 1 to 10? And if you're way on the like, I'm, suffocating in my cubicle side of the spectrum, 2025 is going to be a year that is like the universe is shouting from the rooftops, like, this isn't working for you. And so there could be some very disruptive things that happened, but all of it is to move you towards that alignment and that new version, that new aligned path. And if you are like in the middle, then it's like, what can you do to even lean in more? And I don't think there's actually like there's not an end point on aligned and flow. Like that just goes on forever. So there is no end of that scale. So it's just dialing in like more and more and more. And so yeah, that would be my piece of advice for 2025. What does the next version of yourself look like? What does the next version of your business look like? What does the next version of your life look like? And be really holistic about that. Like I do a lot of tools around business astrology, but at the end of the day, if you're not looking at the whole picture of like how does my work with my social life, work with my love life, work with my family, work with my home, that's where people tend to like overcommit or do these really lofty goals and then they don't reach them and then they get down on themselves. So a way to get over the like 10 New Year's resolutions that you're never going to do or you never complete is to be like, what at the end of 2025, what do I want my life resume to look like? What are like the three things that I want to be true
Mm.
about my life at the end of 2025? And then put yourself in that mindset of how do I make that shift or what do I need to do to shift towards that?
It sounds like, if I'm hearing you correctly, 2020 was a a stop,
Yeah.
right? Like a pause and a breakdown, and 2025 is starter
Yes.
and starting and
Yes.
maybe initiating.
Starting, initiating, communicating. We have 2 outer planets, Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries.
Oh,
Yeah, Uranus is moving into Gemini, so, like, changes in technology, communication, information exchange, all of that, and then Jupiter's moving into Cancer, so really connecting, like, that's that heartfelt, um, connecting to what brings you emotional security and expanding in that. What gives those feel good, cozy vibes? And then the nodes are moving into Pisces and Virgo. So eclipses really putting that like universal shifts in those in eclipse season moments of how can you move towards your creativity and your self-expression and the collective and away from perfectionism and away from like getting in the weeds and getting stuck in like over analysis and spinning. So there's a lot that's supportive, but I would say I don't like there's a lot of astrologers that are talking about 2025 and it's like it could be a world war. I'm not going to say that it's not. I don't like to do world stage predictions. It just doesn't
mm.
light me up. But I would say people are going to have a harder time if they're digging their heels into where they're at if where they're at is not working for them. So that is going to be the thing to really look at for everyone.
That's a really good point. And I think if this all is resonating with you, listener, you need to be at Soul Word Summit.
Yeah. That I mean, there's gonna be more and more, again, eclipse in Pisces, Uranus and Gemini, more new ideas, new ways of working. Uh Pisces is also like spirituality, intuition, like collectively the consciousness is being raised and we're being more like there are more intuitive people discovering their gifts, discover like this is a This is in the stars. And you can feel it, right? So being in rooms of people that support the next version of yourself or where you're moving is going to be a huge theme, specifically for people with any of those signs in their 11th houses. So again, the guides will go through like what this means for everyone, but it'll manifest in different ways depending on your rising sign.
Yes, and I will get to your offers, but a plug for Katie's membership. It's so good because it goes through these transits and it has guidance for your rising sign so that you can kind of dial in on some of these themes.
Yeah, the
All right.
the main thing is, like, connecting that what's going on in the world, what's going on personally based on my rising sign, and how does that impact my business? Like, the Cliff Notes style.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Customized cliff notes. Are you ready for lightning round?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. What's your favorite warm beverage right now?
I have been drinking this coffee, and I forget even the brand, but the flavor is called Chin Up, and it just is like really delicious. And then I put trace minerals in it so that I can stay hydrated. And I use this Ohm Cafe Latte. It has it's got a little bit of sweetness. It's almost like a cocoa sweetness that adds to the coffee, but it's got all the adaptogenic mushrooms in it. So it's got like
Mm.
ashwagandha and lion's mane, and I feel like I'm starting the day, even though I'm very caffeine sensitive. So I can really only have a one cup of coffee or a half a cup of coffee that like it gives me that little like warm, cozy morning moment, but it's also setting me up my nervous system and setting me up for the day.
I used to do the Ohm hot chocolate like religiously every day. So you're reminding me that maybe I can mix some of that into my coffee.
Yeah.
What's your current Netflix or podcast binge?
Oh my god, I just binge watched all of it's called Later Dater on Netflix, and Michelle Obama is the executive producer, and it
Mm.
is a matchmaking dating show. The host is someone who's written a book, is a matchmaker, she consults at dating apps, but it's all women it's all people dating in their later years. So 50s, 60s, 70s, and it's I love anything that like is human dynamics or understanding more about how people connect. So, I mean, this feels like my new Love on the Spectrum binge watch. I'm like, I love anything like that. So Later Dater is it was really good. It was really well done. And it's so joyful to watch other people's like joy and love and like finding love.
Oh, that sounds really sweet. I that's so interesting. I hadn't heard of it, but I know that she's a producer on other Netflix productions. So you know, movie production companies used to be kind of
Mhm.
like record labels where like actors or whoever would be like a part of NGM or whoever. And so I see things now like you see certain actors that pop up in like several Netflix shows or
Yep.
producers or and it's just fascinating to me. I'm like, I want to see what the contract looks
Right?
like. What was the last book you read that you couldn't put down?
I always have a rotation of books. I'll like read a little bit, put it down. I read a lot of nonfiction. But the last one that I really stuck with, I was reading a chapter like every day or so, was Rick Rubin's book. I don't even remember the name of it. It's like the creative process, it's a gray book and it's got a circle on the cover. It is about the artistic process and creating music and his whole career. But the process that he breaks down applies to anyone creating anything. So it's a little bit like philosophical. I would read a chapter, reflect on it. I used it more again like a journal prompt or like a mood
Mm,
thing for the day. So yeah, I love that.
cool. Favorite self-care or spiritual hygiene ritual?
I mean, the amount of Epsom salt baths I take is honestly alarming, and I set stuff up in my everyday life so that everything is a ritual.
You do.
I
You're really good about that.
so, like, making my coffee is a ritual. I'm, like, adding things in to set me up for the day. If I need a moment to come back to myself, I'll take a quick Epsom salt bath. I've got multiple, like, all around my house. I mean, I've got, sage and
Mhm.
Palo Santo. I've got crystals everywhere. Just I feel like I've designed my life around everything being able to be like a sacred ritual, at least in my home. Uh so that I think all of it, like I guess adding more rituals and routines is my favorite.
And as you said before, you're so good about, like, making little nooks in your house
Mhm.
more resorty or ritualistic.
Oh my god, all the little luxuries. If I can make a plate of food that takes 5 minutes, look visually appealing, then yes. Like, then I
Oh,
will
darn
do
it. How do you get most of your clients?
referrals and meeting people out in the wild. So I last year and the year before I did a few tarot reading events. I get a lot of recommendations, friends of friends. Someone got a birth chart read. They want their friend's birth chart read. I think that has been the case more so because that was the nature of my services. So for 2025, I mean I love referrals, but for 2025 I want to experiment with some more things like paid advertising and really leaning into other ways to connect with people now that I have sort of a core set of services. I'm not just like creating things on the fly like I have in the last 2 years. So, but yeah, referrals for sure.
Cool. Pearls is a big one. What is one thing you wish you knew before you started your business?
Okay, so first I'll give my like reaction to that answer and then I'll give an answer. But my or that question. I I think this goes back to that like inner dialogue and like the strength and the confidence and the trust that I have in myself and the knowing of myself. So now I'm at a point where where I'm at and everything that I've done it like culminates to where I'm at, and so I wouldn't change anything if I had known I shouldn't have known something back. I wouldn't have, or maybe I was told it and I didn't listen to it because it wasn't the right time. I very much feel like I'm connected to what I need to be connected to at the right time. So, which took me a while to get to, but that feels very like to be in that flow feels very good. But so I guess what I would say looking back, if I could give myself that advice, it would be don't get down on what you don't know. You'll know what you need to know when you need to know it. And like you're already doing, as long as you're already doing all the things to connect back to yourself, to be intentional, to listen and pick up on those signs and things that the universe throws your way, like you'll be fine. Like trust in yourself.
Yeah, that sounds like some good life advice. So, does that relate to the best life advice that you've ever received?
My favorite life advice is a saying my dad made up. At least I think he made it up. I've never seen it anywhere else. But he would say growing up, just for anything, I think it was just a weird metaphor that he made up and just said in moments, and it makes sense all the time. Is that eagles don't chase flies. And so you can interpret that in a lot of ways. I come back to that when I'm looking at something and if I'm stressed about something, I'm like, is this a fly? Is this even something that I should be concerned with? And then that relates to another piece of advice that I heard from Tina Roth Eisenberg. She runs Tatley and Creative Mornings and a bunch of different things. But she always says if you are complaining about something, that you have to either do something about it or you have to let it go. And so I relate that to the fly. So, like, is this fly that's annoying me? Is it something I'm going to do about something I'm going to do to change it? Or can I just let it go? It doesn't matter. Like, in the grand scheme of things, it does not matter.
Absolutely. My dad used to say, "Don't sweat the small stuff," which is probably a similar.
Mhm.
He would also sweat the small stuff, as we all do sometimes.
Yeah.
But I like that. I like the eagles and flies. That's really good. Really good. All right, Katie, how can people work with you? Tell us about what you have going on right now, and we will say farewell.
Amazing. People can find me at Be Good Guide on Instagram or begoodguide.com. And I'm really focusing this next year on a core set of services. So I do one-on-one coaching. I'm developing more like group programs that are to come, but for right now, one-on-one coaching or packages or projects based things. And within that, I focus on strategy, systems, and signature, which is branding based on your birth chart. So anything, those are sort of the three pillars around what do you need strategically to get your business to the next version? What systems and automation and tools and tech do you need to support that? And what does your brand need to look like and be to resonate with your audience and to scale with you as you grow? And then I have my Be Good Guidance membership that you were talking about earlier, which is a weekly newsletter. I'm adding more stuff in 2025, but I'll tease that on my Instagram. Weekly newsletter on what's going on as far as the astrology. So it's really like practical, actionable astrology for your business in your inbox. And then the last thing is made for you tools. So I created a 2025 astro calendar. It goes into your Google or your iCalendar, your Outlook, and you can look to see what's going on as you're scheduling stuff. So, what's going on this week? And then I'll be dropping the 2025 Thrive guide in a few days once I finish it.
Amazing. Well, we will link to it.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Katie. We hope you loved that conversation. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, review this episode. We appreciate it so much, and we will see you next time.